Attention, all curious minds, innovators, and trendsetters. It's time to pause, lean in, and get ready for an extraordinary journey as we dive deep into the fascinating realms of life, technology, entertainment, and business. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Brace yourselves, for the next thrilling episodes of Hipther Talks is about to take off. Counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here. We're back again this week with Hipther Talks, and now we are talking about marketplaces. And it's great to have here a colleague podcaster. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Every time this thing happens, it's Sjoerd Handgraaf, Chief Marketing Officer at Sharetribe. Sjoerd, I hope I pronounced it correctly, right?
You were really close. Thanks.
All right.
And thanks for having me on the podcast.
All right, so guys, you know that we do, before we start recording, we meet each other in this call. So I asked Sjoerd how to pronounce his name before that, so it's no surprise that I pronounced it so good. Yeah. So guys, before we dive in, let's just like quickly define what marketplace is, because there are so many things that are called marketplaces, right? So let's simply put, a marketplace is a platform that connects buyers with sellers. That's the basic stuff. It's a middle ground where transactions happen, basically. So think of platforms like Airbnb, Etsy, or even Uber. These businesses don't typically own goods or services that they offer. Instead, they create an infrastructure for others to exchange value. But of course, my guest will tell you all about these things better than me. So Sjoerd, we have this habit and tradition here on Hipther Talks that we like to give the opportunity for our guest to say a few words about themselves in their own words without us reading any bios, because that's not fun. So tell our audience who they're dealing with today.
Yeah, so your name was really good. The way you pronounce the name was great. I'm Sjoerd Handgraaf. I was not named for an international career by my parents, but originally from the Netherlands, now working from Finland. So the Sharetribe is located in Finland. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, which is mostly a title that comes in use when you're on a podcast. Internally, it doesn't really mean that much. Like, we're just a really small operation. And with Sharetribe, we help people build successful marketplace businesses. So anybody with an idea like you described, like this Airbnb for X type of idea, we have a way to build a marketplace and put it in the market really fast that doesn't require technical knowledge. Like, it's a no-code platform initially, although you can use code if you want. And also it doesn't require a massive upfront investment. So our goal is really to get as many marketplaces launched as we can.
All right. So, I've read your bio and I've seen that you've spent over 8 years as CMO of Sharetribe, and you helped thousands of marketplaces founders out there to start their platform. So what are the biggest shifts you've seen in the marketplace since you joined?
Yeah, it's been almost 9 years even, actually, now when you say this, I was realizing this. But biggest shift, I think, like the marketplaces, you can sort of see, like, you know, there's an evolution of the model. So there's like the very early ones, like Craigslist, for example, is essentially a marketplace, which is sort of like called like the classifieds era, where you just like, we put the inventory online, because essentially what a marketplace does, it's bringing like an industry or a situation where you have like many parties on one side and many parties on the other, which are like fragmented ideally, so they're really hard to figure out. And then the marketplace job is to sort of bring them on board. So initially that happened through this like classified models. Now, when I joined Sharetribe, that was already a little bit on its way out. And there's more like the transaction-based models, where not only does the platform sort of connect people, but it also handles the transaction. So then you get this sort of commission-based model, like what, for example, Airbnb does.
Yeah.
Then I think like after that has come more of this like software-based model, what we call like a SaaS-enabled marketplace, where the marketplace is not only a place for two people to bring, or like for two parties to find each other, but also a place where a software services is used for one side. So, for example, a pretty well-known example is this company called Booksy. They're originally from Poland. They do hairdresser and beauty services. And part of they're not only a marketplace, but part of their businesses also offering a tool for hairdressers, etc., to handle bookings, payments, etc., etc. So I think like that's basically where we are now. And of course, like similar to that, there was this sort of big unbundling, right? So where you first had Craigslist, which had all of the categories.
Yeah.
Now we see, and we see that especially with our customers, we see like very niche marketplaces where, like ideas that you and we wouldn't think about in 1,000 years. But for example, like we had a customer which did like a particular type of indoor plants. I'm not actually going to name them because I'm not sure if they given us permission, but like there's certain indoor plants which have really fanatic people can be really, like orchids, for example.
Yeah.
And that's like so niche. And then there's like a marketplace that sells those kind of things. So I think like that is one of the things that we've seen. We're sort of like this really niche down, because of course the cost of technology, etc., has gone down. So it's easier to do that. And of course now we're sort of in the middle of a new shift with like AI driven marketplaces, agentic marketplaces, those kind of things. But I still have to see. I don't fully yet comprehend like what that's going to be, as I think no one actually does. But I think that's where we're in right now. So quite many changes actually. Yeah.
All right, here I am waiting for you to say that you guys built a marketplace, or there's a marketplace where you can hire a hitman or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
There is.
Yeah, I mean, there was recently one fun one, or not fun one, but one started. I think it was started by this person called Nikita Beer, who's quite well known. I think he's launched, like, for example, he also launched this app where people say nice things about each other. But I think he started. I think it was him, or he brought it to the attention on my Twitter. I'm not sure, but it was a marketplace for private security. So you and we could get a bodyguard for a night or something. Like, of course, it's not probably meant for you and or at least not for me, but
exactly.
But for so I think like, yeah, there is that definitely as a sort of counterpart to the hitman marketplace. You can at least find a marketplace to get protection. Yeah.
All right. So from your perspective, as somebody as an insider into this industry, what are some of the most common misconceptions first-time marketplace founders have?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think there's many, but I think like, if there's one, if I can just take one out and hope that if there are any aspiring marketplace founders that this message land, is that we all, I already mentioned Airbnb, right? Like that is the model that we have in mind. And so marketplaces, what is really attractive about them, that they can be really big and really global, right? So that is sort of the vision that founders come in with. But what is actually really important early on in the marketplace journey is to actually start really small, because we already established that, you need two sides for a marketplace for things to happen.
Yeah.
And especially if your marketplace has what they call like sort of like a local component. So meaning that like the two people, they need to be in the same location for something to happen. So let's say, for example, easiest example is a marketplace for car sharing, right? There's like Turo used to be there, and where you can rent a car from another person. It only works if the demand side and the supply side are in the same place. If you rent out your car and I need it, and you are in Romania and I'm in Finland, great, but that's not a match. And so
exactly, yeah.
And there's all kinds of other problems that you have early on when you start your marketplace. Like, is your price point right? Is your revenue model right? And you can find all those problems out even if you would just start a marketplace, for example, for Helsinki, where we live. And just make a marketplace for Helsinki first, or maybe even a neighborhood of Helsinki, so that you can make sure that you have both sides on the platform locally, that all of the transactions can happen. People can find what they need to find, because there's this concept in marketplace called liquidity, which is like essentially the likelihood that the seller can sell their stuff and the buyer can buy something. And that is important. If that doesn't work, then your marketplace is dead. And for that to basically work, you need to start as small as possible. And I think that is like the number one mistake that we see founders make, that they go too broad, too big. Like, so I think I think that's the number one misconception, that they want to build Airbnb from the start, but like, for example, there's this great book by Andrew Chen, who was early at Uber, that like in his experience, like Uber started originally like literally on the corner of a metro or of a metro stop in Los Angeles, I don't exactly, or San Francisco probably, and that was their initial sort of mini network, like that there was just enough cars there where 1,000 people per hour were coming off, or I don't know, probably more, and needed a taxi. And so that's where they started first. They didn't even take the whole city or the whole neighborhood. They took one particular corner. And so I think that's the number one thing that we see people just do wrong.
All right, guys. So listeners, see, again, I prove myself. 160 episodes, I don't need to read books. People who come here tell us about books they read. So yeah, you get to always get the excerpts. So I told you. So yeah, let's also talk about, it's a great point you had there, because you need to like start very small and then scale and scale and scale and learn in the process, of course. So many people also struggle with the chicken and egg problem in the marketplaces. So based on your experience, what's the most effective way to solve it? Because I'm referring to the chicken and egg situation about supply first or demand first or something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like that is the other thing. Like I didn't want to go into that in the previous question because it would be a really long answer. But I think this closely relates also to what I said earlier. Is that like the chicken and egg problem essentially is that, how do you get, you like I said before, you need both parties on the platform.
Yeah.
How do you get one without the other, right? Like that is a really hard question. And like generally, what you need to do is to find out like who needs it most, like who gets the most value potentially out of your platform, and usually that is supply, right? So because for example, supply are usually like already existing businesses or people who have something which they can earn money multiple times, right? Like let's say car owners, for example, like they can be on the platform and they're patient. They don't need something to happen immediately. They just need to list their thing and then hopefully you bring in first. So I think that's the best way to go around. Like find out who needs it most and who is the most patient and get them on board first. And then once you have them on board, you can go to the other side and say, hey, I have, coming back to the example, I have 12,000 cars in Helsinki. Would you be interested in renting one? So that's usually how it goes. Like you need to give them a reason, like find the hardest side, give them a reason to join. And this is also where this thing that I said earlier came in. About this SaaS-enabled marketplace. Like this is a very common strategy nowadays that you find which side you need the most, like which side would add most value to the marketplace, figure out do they have a problem or not, and then build a tool around it. Like and then get them first, with the tool, like lure them in with the tool, a tool that they can use even without being on the marketplace. So for example, with Booksy, like a booking platform or like a booking mechanism or financial software or whatever. And then once you have them, you say, hey, actually, I could also get you new business, if you would just join my marketplace and also start listing there. So I think that's a very common tactic to do it.
All right. So I knew when researching for this podcast that Sharetribe grew to $3 million in annual recurring revenue while remaining profitable and founder-owned, which is very important. So that's also a rare thing in the SaaS world. So what were some of the key decisions that made this sustainable growth possible?
I mean, that is, that's, I'll try to give you the short version of this because this is a very long story. And this was also
long stories. Like long stories.
Okay, good. No, and this wasn't a big master plan from the beginning. Like essentially, I need to tell a little bit about the history of Sharetribe. So I'm not one of the founders, but I'm one of the earlier employees. And the two founders, like Sharetribe was started at Helsinki University when it was still Helsinki University of Technology, I believe. And it was part of a research project to make the campus more sustainable. So they built this sharing platform for students, like, hey, we're throwing a party tonight. Who has a smoke machine? Or, who has a drill or those kind of things. Well, it was all nice. It worked quite well as a platform. But then the research project was over and they're like, hey, we could turn this into a business. And then they tried selling the platform to other universities. But if you've ever tried to sell anything to like a higher education institution, those sales cycles are like extremely long. So it's not a great way to build a business. And so, but in the process, they just met a lot of these like other founders who had this like sharing economy, as it was called at the time, like ideas. Yeah. And they ran into, they all ran into the same problem, namely that they needed a platform. And they're like, "Hey, there's an idea here." So they first built the sort of first version of Sharetribe, and that got some traction. And then if you ever read anything about SaaS, when you think about how to grow SaaS, often the only thing you read about is like venture capital funding. And so that's also what we did. So we got some initial venture capital investment, but after a while, venture capital also comes with a price, right? They want to see rapid growth, they want to see potential exit, etc. And after a couple of years, we had a really good couple of years, but then the growth sort of started like a little bit like flattening. And then there was push also coming from investors to maybe go to, for example, to the enterprise direction, try selling to big businesses. But that was not what we wanted to do, actually. Like I said earlier, it's really our job to help. It's in our mission, like it says in our business documents, that our number one mission is to help democratize to help democratize the platform economy by making technology accessible to everyone. Meaning that anybody should be able, ideally, we enable anybody in the world to build a marketplace. And so that was very far removed from where the investors wanted us to go. And also the two founders realized, actually, this is our life's work. We don't want to sell it. This should exist the way it is now. And so then we started looking for alternatives. And we met this organization called Purpose Ventures, which is like a fund in itself, but with the goal to spread this concept, which is called steward ownership. So this is based on a German sort of the family business model. Like in Germany, you have all these what they call Mittelstand, small to medium businesses, which are family. Same here. Okay. Yeah. So this is a really important part of the economy, and it's a really sort of healthy way of capitalism, right? There's a lot of attention for stakeholders and for the employees and for the business, and it's very long-term oriented. It's not looking for quarterly results or anything. And that fit really well with what we're after. So then we did this crowd investment round. We raised 1.5 million euros, and we got some money from the fund. And with that, we bought out our existing investors, and we switched that was the requirement for the fund. We switched our ownership model to this steward ownership model. And there's a couple of rules with that. One is that the company can never be sold. That's one. The other thing is that a certain percentage of the profit should always be reinvested back into the mission. So it's impossible for someone to extract all of the profit from Sharetribe and not use it to sort of further the mission. And then the last thing is that we can have investors. So through the crowd investment, we have hundreds of investors, actually. So very small ones, there's some bigger ones. But they do not have a say in the company's strategy. So we have a pre-agreed buyback situation with them. So they bought some shares. We will buy them back at 5 times the price in 2028 or some years after. But they have no say in what we're going to do. Of course, we have a general meeting every year, and they can tell us what to do, or they can tell us their opinion. But we're not bound the same way that you're bound when you have investors on the board.
Yeah,
that they can make decisions for us. So, and that really allows us to make really big bets, long-term bets that might not actually immediately be obvious, or might even hurt us a little bit in the short term, but in the long term are the right thing to do for both our company and the mission. So yeah, that's how this all came together. And it's been, to be honest, it's been really fantastic. One thing that we were able to do, for example, is that we made a big bet. So we had the first version of the business. Like I said, it went a little bit flat, and one of the reasons was that it was a very easy tool to use. You and I could use, anybody who's not technical. Or actually, I'm not sure how technical you are, but I'm not a coder. Anybody could sort of use it, but then it also had some limitations to the customization. And we noticed that customers who were actually successful, at some point they needed customizations, and they left our business. So our best performing customers couldn't continue with our product. So then we built this other product, which was a fully API-based product, which where more technical people can sort of make a completely custom thing about it. But the problem there was that it was quite hard to get started with, because you needed something to build first. And so we saw that it was a very difficult situation, that both products were doing all right, but none of them was really growing, and they both had a clear blocker for growing. And so then we decided, okay, we're going to build a third product, which is like the best of both worlds. So something that you can start without coding, but you can still expand with code if you want to. So you can move in between the two in a way. But that took a really long time. And we had some really slow years, even some decline. Like we had 2 years of like almost decline, and that, working on this new product, putting everything on there. In the meantime, growth being almost zero, sometimes even negative. We had that for a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. And I remember like December 2023, we were going to launch it in like last January, and numbers were looking so bad. We were thinking, okay, we might actually need to start firing people like next year. And then we launched the product officially in January 2024, like finally after 2 years of building. And since then it's been like super great. Like last year was our best year ever. Like we added like almost 500,000 ARR to our ARR just in 1 year alone. Like it's been the best year on record. People love it more. Everything's been great. But just saying this not to sort of boast, but I think if we would be owned by investors or by other people, and they would see those 8 quarters of the 2 years before, they would have fired the CEO or the board or something like that. And now because we are the one in charge and we know so well what is the context of our business, we could make this bet. So that has been, all in all, it's been a fantastic decision to move to this model for us.
Oh wow, this is such a great story. It's really good to hear that you guys are just like us. That's the whole notion of the Hipthers thing. It's like I hear myself talking and sharing our story when I hear your story. So it's so good to hear that. So and it's good that you've been on the ride as a CMO for many years now. So how did your marketing strategy evolve over time? So by the way, in terms of the coding, I'm a vibe coder.
Yeah.
The new term, the new term using AI to So how did your marketing strategy evolve over time and from early traction to scaling sustainably?
Yeah, I think it has sort of gone back and forth a little bit. So we started out, I was the first marketer to be hired, so they had done some marketing before, some like paid ads and those kind of things, or hired people to do things for them. But we started with basically content, like because it was we realized, okay, there's not actually a lot of content about how to build an online marketplace. So there seemed to be like really good opportunity. At the same time, it wasn't just for marketing, it was also truly helping, our customers, like teach them what mistakes not to make, like the one that I just told you. And over time, like content was just like getting really, or for the longest time has been our main channel. Or not our main, our most important channel. We have some other channels as well. Like I said, we've done some paid and we have some partnerships, etc. But with that comes also a problem that you're really like beholden to the channel, right? Like every time, I'm sure marketers who are listening can, who rely on SEO can relate to this. And Google throws out some unexpected update and you lose like 25% of your visits suddenly because
2,500 updates last year.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that is like, it's not healthy if you have just one channel. So we are moving away, or not moving away, but we are diversifying more. So we've now started also doing like video content. We do a podcast. So like you said, like I have an own podcast called Two-Sided the Marketplace Podcast, because for us the issue is that our customers are not. You can't, it's not a title that you have like aspiring marketplace founder or something. So we need someone who has this business idea, that has the marketplace specifications, hasn't built yet, needs this sort of lean startup approach to sort of really be able to value our proposition. And that's not something, people don't put it in their LinkedIn, or you cannot buy a list or stuff like that. It's not a complementary software. So exactly. So we need to be where people look for information. And so that for the longest time has sort of informed our marketing thing. So that means all of the content. And recently we've also started working more with partnerships where communities, in sort of the broadest sense of the word, where potential founders are. So that means we have partnerships with incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurship programs, those kind of things. And I have to say that maybe what's been my sort of biggest lesson, like especially over the last, like especially since things have been going so well, is that what's actually maybe more important than any of the strategies is that your basics are just really well in order. And with that, I mean like a product that people actually really like, a product that actually really works, that people really love. And then also awareness within the company of what is the product that we're building. So we did this positioning exercise where we spent a big, like we had a long workshop with almost, or not, loads of people in the team from all, from product, marketing, customer support, on figuring out, okay, this new product that we're going to put out, like, why is it different? What are the things that make it different? What is the value that brings? And who really resonates with who does that value resonate? Because I think for the longest time, we weren't really sure about that, or we didn't know that we didn't know. You know what I mean? Like some people had some idea if this is our ideal customer. Other people had this idea about our ideal customer. Then you get a lot of inbound requests and you're like, it's hard to figure out. And we spent a lot of time on that positioning. I think now it has been sort of since then sort of crystal clear, like, who are we selling? What is our message? Like if that doesn't resonate, then they're not a good customer, right? And it makes all other marketing work as well as product work, but also all marketing work like just 10 times easier. Like writing a copy for an ad is become 10 times easier once you have this sort of document with everything lined out and like who is it for and who does it relate to and what angle to who, which person. So I think for me, maybe that is how our marketing has evolved mostly, that we've just gotten more, we got our stuff in order in the basics, like rather than like, because I come from this sort of like growth hacking background, like fast this, do this, and copying best practices and stuff. But I realized that context is so important that you don't actually, even though it might work for another company, it might not work for you at all. And if you don't understand the fundamentals, then it's not going to really help you actually. Like, so maybe that's how it changed for us mostly.
All right. So are there any acquisition channels or maybe campaigns that you found surprisingly effective or maybe surprisingly overrated? Because we saw many.
Yeah, I think for us specifically that paid is just we've never been able to make it work at scale. And I think that is a combination of like the sort of the niche that we are in. So it's quite hard, because we need our audience is sort of like a niche of a niche of a niche. So, but in most marketing platforms, advertising, you pay for the whole niche and not just for the niche that you want. And so sort of the costs that and because for me, this was a massive learn because I've worked previously in companies where we scaled paid acquisition. And once you got the key to the targeting, then it's just a matter of pouring more money in. And it's like such a nice, predictable way to grow. Like everybody would like that. So for that, I think that I would say from every time we get a cold call or a marketer comes to advise us, this is what comes in. And I feel that this is overrated. I think for us, what's been most effective has still been content. Like it's not a short-term solution. It takes a long time to do well. But if you do it really well, and with that, I mean that if you keep on having a really high bar for quality in what you put out there, both in like sort of the content of it and also just the way that you write it, the way it looks, the way it reaches people's phones. Like for example, with the podcast, we put a lot of effort into getting quality guests, for example, not just anybody you get. I'm sure you get loads of inbound. That it's just, I think for us, that has been maybe the most efficient one, still content in the long run. I wish we would have more because obviously for defensibility and growth, it would be really great that we had a lot more channels. But I think those are the ones that come to mind immediately. We're now in the middle of sort of exploring these partnership marketing thing, but that is looking promising, but it's too early to say for us like, oh yeah, this is surprisingly efficient. Like, Yeah,
it takes time. Let's talk about your podcast because you keep mentioning your podcast and it's
sorry.
No, it's not a problem. That's why because it's not often you see people having guests on their podcast who also own a podcast. We're like many of the podcasts is like, nah, I'm not having you on the show because you're going to talk about your podcast and we are going to drive away traffic, but we don't do that.
Yeah.
We like having people here that know their stuff. So your podcast, Two Sided, has I've seen that it has featured some incredible guests like Casey Winters, who I looked up to, and Larry Rachitsky. I also looked him up and found some very interesting stuff about him. So what are some of the biggest takeaways you learned from these conversations?
I think, well, maybe from those two, actually, because indeed, like, they are probably my two of my favorite guests, just because they are both coming from this growth background. Lenny Rositsky being a very early employee at Airbnb. I have a really great episode with him about how that all came about. And then Casey Winters, he's been with Grubhub originally as a food delivery marketplace, Pinterest, Eventbrite. I'm missing a really big one now. I'm sorry, Casey. You won't hear this, but and I've read his stuff for years, like before I got him on the podcast. And I think what I learned from Lenny is that, like, make something people want. Like, that is what and so really be like, the product is sort of the basis of your, like what you're giving people, that's the basis of everything else, like your marketing, retention, all of those things. So I think that is what I learned from him the most. And then from Casey, it's actually, again, like coming back to that liquidity thing, or like starting small thing. Like he told that when they started in Chicago, I believe, that they also just went to like one neighborhood and did all the restaurants. And I think, like, he is, I mean, for any marketer listening, like, it's really checking out, like, especially Casey. I think he writes a lot about marketplace and growth, and he's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to. I find it really hard. Sorry, Zoltan. I find it really hard to summarize, like, what's the one thing that I learned from him.
No worries.
But I think again, about, like, I'm blanking a bit here now. I think, like, what I learned most from him is that he really understands how marketplaces work and how to get these liquidity things shifting. And I think he is really good at coming down to basics and really taking things apart, why they are not working and why they do work. So I think, that's maybe the biggest thing that I've learned from those two.
All right. So as somebody who has done, like I told you, over 160 episodes in 4 years, I many times have guests that share something about some topic or something that I've known about, but I known about in a different way. So they completely changed the way I look at that thing again. So were there any interviews that maybe, like, completely changed the way you think about marketplaces in your case, or your own work at Sharetribe?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think there's just a couple of things that, like, one thing that I recently, like in the recent season, one investor called Jeroen Arts, he's an investor at Speed Invest, and he talks about, we were talking about, like, what do they look for in founders, and they talk about, like, he talked about clock speed, something that he's been looking at, and with that he means, like, how fast founders make decisions, because, like, the idea basically is that you never have perfect information, right? Anybody who's ever started a business, like, if your stuff growing, it's not like, because people always compare, or, like, often when people talk about strategy, and especially with, like, startups and stuff, they just like, oh, it's like chess. But actually it's not like chess, because if you have a game of chess, then all the moves are known. You have all the information in the game available on the board. You know which pieces your opponent have, you know how they can move. But instead, and I don't know if Jeroen said it, but instead it's actually like poker. You don't know all the cards. You only know the odds, and you have a limited amount of information. And based on that, you need to make the information. And if you're in a startup, essentially you're always, slowly dying because you're running out of money, you're running out of time. So your most precious resource is time. And if you are able to make decisions fast, of course, like, that doesn't mean just make random decisions just for the fact of being fast. But if you train yourself to make structured decisions in a fast way, structured decision in a fast way, and that you can actually also learn from the decision, even if your decision doesn't work out, that is, like, the sort of superpower. And I have to say that is something I've been thinking about again and again. And we have that often, like also with Sharetribe in management team, when we make decisions like, maybe we should wait. And I've tried to sort of move myself to be like, okay, well, let's figure out what is it that we don't know and just make the bet, Actually,
Right.
there's a great book around that. If I can put another book recommendation in there, it's called Thinking in Bets. It's by Annie Duke, former poker player, and she outlines that like even way better than I just did. But she gives you sort of a formula, or like not a formula, but a way of thinking about things that you understand, especially about the things you don't know. Like, what are we keeping out of the decision here, so that when you later come back, you have an explanation maybe on why it didn't work. So yeah, I really recommend that. That's actually maybe one of the bigger brain changers for me.
All right, so the universe is very strange, my friend, because just last week we had an episode about poker. So this connects very well.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
So if somebody is starting from scratch today and wants to launch a marketplace and finds your podcast, of course, which are the 3 two-sided episodes would you recommend they listen to first, and why?
Yeah. I think Lenny's one. Was
right.
also, it was the very first episode I did, like was when number 1 episode. So we went through the whole how to build a marketplace journey. Like I scaled that back a little bit in the interview because you cannot do, the same interview 20 times. So, but I think he is really, I think that's a really great one. I think another one actually recently was with this marketplace investor called Jose Maren. He's from FJ Labs. They're like the biggest seed investor in the world. They have invested in 1,100 marketplaces. Just for his sheer amount of sort of optimism about the marketplace and where this is going. Like loads of people are saying, hasn't all the marketplace been built? And he makes a really good case on why not actually. And then maybe the last one that I do recommend a lot. So one of the things where there's still a lot of interest is in like these B2B marketplaces. And I have an interview with maybe a lesser known marketplace, but it's called Crexy. It's commercial real estate. And they have done really nicely what I said earlier about this, like building this SaaS marketplace. So they onboarded brokers like real estate, commercial real estate agents. So, people who sell factory halls, offices, those kind of things. And they just sort of built a super good tool for them, onboarded them without forcing them to do any transactions, but slowly sort of lured more and more of their data and their business on the platform, so that at one point, they became sort of the central hub, and only then started introducing like the marketplace model. And I think they've just done that so smart, such a perfect execution of that strategy that it's and I think that strategy is very replicable for any sort of B2B niche, because many of the biggest industries are still completely under digitized in that way. So I think like there's loads in that episode, even though it might not be the most spectacular or well-known one, but I think I come back to that one a lot.
All right, good to hear that. So there are so many SaaS and platform startups that are emerging. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for niche marketplaces in the next few years? Because I know you touched based on niche marketplaces in the intro.
Yeah. I think most opportunity is still like in business to business marketplaces. Like business to consumer is pretty well filled, right? Like we've most of those are already established, or there's a lot of competition. But like I said, actually in my previous question, I think that in B2B, there is still a lot of under digitalized assets where loads of efficiency can still be run, right? Because the marketplace essentially brings a lot of efficiency. Like actually marketplace brings 3 things. So it brings like trust, efficiency, and transparency. And in industries, like surprisingly, like especially in the bigger industries, that is not a lot. Like that is not often the case. Or they try to get transparency and trust, but it takes like months and months of negotiations, letters, whatever, inspections, etc. I think there's loads of opportunity for business to business marketplaces still to, and it usually probably takes someone who has worked in the field, whether that is like even healthcare or something, or like traditional industries or mining. For example, I was advising a mining marketplace a couple of years ago. I think there's still so much innovation there that can happen, like so much efficiency increase, so much value that can still be added to the process by marketplaces that I'm super optimistic still about that actually.
All right, so now this brings me back. 2014, we were living in London, and there was just a marketplace that was launched. But like you said, like the ones that your founders had in the university, where just one people just posted something that he needs something, and some other user replied. And I remember that somebody just posted that they were looking to open a small restaurant, and they need 15 people to just go to their home and taste the food that they are making for free, everything. And we are vegans, and they were like, man, this is like a big thing for them because they never did vegan food, so this was like a challenge for them. And I remember, man, this was like a marketplace, an app where we did not know anyone, and even the host did not know us, but it was that somehow connected people to just like go there, have fun.
Yeah, and I think like that is like that because I think a lot of that has to come to what I said, like with the trust element, right? Like if you have a good, like if the platform arranges, whether that is through like the way that they sign up or whether how you get on the platform, whether friend brings a friend, whatever. There's lots of ways to doing that. But indeed, like because a lot of this stuff is like. Probably you in your house you have loads of stuff that you're not using or whatever, and that other people could use if you could just bring it together and also trust these people. So I relate to that. I think there's even in that niche there's still loads. But the problem with those things often is that like with the consumer also thinks that it's hard to build a business on it because like the value of the transaction is like quite low. And then if you have a transaction base, so you take a percentage of the already quite low transaction, it's really hard to you have to be really big to build a business on that. So.
Yeah, this was 11 years ago, but
cool.
No, sorry, but now there's like a marketplace fatigue out there. We see these big companies that are buying up some of the large marketplaces. We see it in Eastern Europe. There are a couple of large marketplaces that have been bought up by, I don't know, an Indian company or something like that.
Okay.
So if and you go from marketplace to the other and it's owned by the same company. I think this is happening in any vertical now in terms of marketplaces. So is this still space to wide open for innovation or not?
Yeah, I think that really depends a bit. I think, like I said, like in the consumer, not so much. And what you say also, like I think the best example of that is like one of the most obvious ideas and of who we also have had loads of customers is secondhand clothing, right? Like that has been one of the main ideas. And that idea has been tried many times in many different versions, and you've seen now like the last couple of years that the Vinted, I think a Lithuanian company originally.
Yeah, I know we had them at our conference in Vilnius 3 years ago. Yeah, they're huge now.
Yeah, but they're doing exactly what you're describing. That they sort of just buying the biggest players in each domestic market. Yeah. Like, okay, what is our biggest competitor if we would go in? And they just buy them, right? Because like the value of a marketplace is not usually like the tool or the platform, but it's like the network that's on there. So what is what's the merchandise that's on there? And so that happens a lot. So I think in those areas, I think innovation is quite slow, even though I think most of it has already sort of been innovated. But on the other hand, like I think there's still really, I think there's still opportunity to innovate, but you have to be really you have to be really smart about it. Like you really have to really understand your market and be really sort of able to think out of the box. But like I said before, I think especially in like service marketplaces and in sort of industrial B2B marketplace, I think there's so much innovation still to happen. Yeah. Like especially if you think about like financing, for example, like nowadays, like there's so many, just met a company from Germany a couple of months ago who are offering like a super interesting financing solution where they basically take out a loan and that they pay out the transaction immediately. So if you sell me something on and their platform uses their solution, then you get your money immediately. The marketplace doesn't get it yet. I pay, so my money is still hanging, but they just temporarily pay it.
Yeah.
And they pay, and the marketplace pays a small premium for that to happen. But you're super happy because you get the money immediately. You don't need to wait for me to say I got the package, whatever. Marketplace
Okay.
is happy because they don't do the risk. So I think there's loads of innovation still in sort of components of the marketplace, whether it is like insurance or finances, or etc. But in business model, I don't really know. I don't have an idea on that.
Probably AI will fix this as everything will be AI powered. So let's also talk about that because, yeah, I had an encounter. One of these large marketplaces is eMag.
Mm.
And they have this really cool feature that they have this now AI chatbot things.
Yeah,
And just yesterday, I ordered last week a compost, like a bag for the garden, and
yeah.
and the courier said it's pending. So I called them, and they accidentally sent it to a different town with the same street address. And I went on customer service and just told them about this. And the AI quickly pulled up, okay, this is the exact product what I ordered, and told me,
Yeah.
yes, we know about this. And so this is something very cool. Probably it's you guys like, that's easy to do. So
I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm not
all
so
right. So
sure.
so so where do you see the role of what role do you see AI playing in this next way of marketplace evolution and let's say maybe onboarding, personalization, and also
Mm.
into trust or maybe somewhere else?
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, because this is one of the things that came back like in the latest season of Two-Sided when we talked to all the investors that like this is something that they, of course, like, everybody is on this hype train, like
Yeah.
something AI. So this came back again and again. I think like what I've learned from them, because I don't, I'm not currently building an AI startup, so I don't know. But I think what is generally like thought of as what the role of AI is going to play in marketplaces is indeed in like what you already said in onboarding, in maybe the negotiation phase. So like if you think about what's happening on a marketplace, it's a lot of the time it's sort of like trying to get information about something, right? So like, okay, I have, well, let's say with the, well, let's say, for example, in industrial marketplace, like you
Yeah.
need one thing where I learned about is this the marketplace called Von Wood. They do lumber, so they sell wood and stuff. And where the buyer needs a lots of information about
Yeah.
the product
Origin
at
of the
hand.
wood and everything.
Exactly, and that's a lot of information sort of to process as a human. And so this is where like AI could play a role in just getting as much of information out there as possible. Or actually, maybe even a better example, and maybe forget about the lumber example, but if you think about service marketplaces, so there's lots of marketplaces where more skilled work is being sold, like consulting or cybersecurity testing or whatever, and where a lot of back and forth actually needs to happen to come back to come to some sort of like proposal, right? Like, and I think that is where AI can play loads of role, like sort of condensing all this information, getting that into a practical like publication or in a practical form for people to understand, or for example where the marketplace would be sort of hidden behind an AI, and you have all of that information, all of the listings on there, and the only thing as a buyer that you interact with is, like you said, like some kind of chatbot saying that like, hey, the chatbot asks you like, could you describe your project? Okay, it asks a whole bunch of more questions. Then it takes that information, it goes into this inventory, and then presents you like 3 or 4 options saying, okay, this one, this one, this one, this is the benefits, this is the downside, where you sort of like it really synthesizes
Yeah.
all this information for you in a way that is easily understandable, which even with a good marketplace would now require you to send a message to 4 different people, give
Exactly.
them
Yeah.
your specs, they're going to have some questions, blah blah blah, and now you just say, hey, this is what I need, you go make coffee, and when you get back you have like 4 proposals. So I think that's probably where most of it goes. Then one other thing that I've heard and that I still don't fully understand is that AI becomes important for marketplaces also once marketplaces start to get their own type of data. So, like a lot of AI is now using like public data, but you can
Yeah.
imagine that there are marketplaces that have over time generated so much data, or they get custom data that they are providing, that is where the AI is like becomes an important thing, because no one else has this data. ChatGPT doesn't have it, or
Yeah.
like other
Yeah.
LLMs. I think that is the two things where I sort of see it. So sort of more like on a service level, and then sort of on an essential level by gathering like custom information or like proprietary data kind of. But to be honest, I'm still sort of trying to wrap my brain around this because this is not, I think, as obvious as some people make it sound.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. So
Yeah.
let's like talk about the most underrated marketplace strategy.
Cold sales, I think. Cold
Cold
calling,
sales.
cold emailing. Yeah, 100%. I think all of the, especially B2B, like that's what people need to do. No one is going to visit your website anymore. No one is going to, no one is, if you send them something, if you send an ad, that's not going to work. I think, especially if you're thinking about like the early stage, getting supply on board, it's just phone in hand, phone book, calling, meeting them, door to door. Like that is the one. One really cool one actually that I like in one of the interviews I talked to the guy from GreenPal. It was like a marketplace for landscaping. So, like lawn mowing and whatever. And they, in their own town, so they started also small in their own town, and they ran door to door and just hang these hangers on the door. Like they like just hang these like little posters on the door where it's like, oh, you need your grass cut this thing. And I think they said they did like 15,000 or something. And I think, and for them, that's still the most efficient, that was the most efficient market. Like they didn't have a higher growth for a long time than from doing that. So I think that's definitely underrated. Also, just because no one wants to do the work, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these things are like, man, in my sarcastic way, I would start spreading these flyers like your lawn looks like shit. Let us handle it.
Yeah. No, but that could, I don't know what they put on there, but that could be a way. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's also talk about one marketplace founder that everyone should be watching out right now.
I don't know. I don't remember the founder name, but the marketplace called No Scrubs, and they
No
do.
Scrubs.
Yeah. Actually, there's two. Maybe there's No Scrubs, and the other one is called Hamper, and they're a little bit the same. They're in the U.S., but they do laundry. So you can get like your laundry done. So I guess you have to like book it there, put your bag outside, someone will pick it up, and then for Hamper it goes to people at home, like housewives, so stay-at-home moms who want to earn some extra money, and they just do the laundry, and then it gets picked up and delivered again. I just think that it's such I think it's such a fun, like I have more serious one, but I think this was two of the ones that just sort of came up around the same time, and I think it's such a fun problem that everybody can relate to. And like also thinking about, what we said earlier about like underutilized assets, like your laundry machine is probably one of the more expensive machines or like in the house. So why not use it more? So I just really like those ideas. So they're called Hamper and the other one's called No Scrubs. I don't remember the name of the founders, but I just really like this concept.
This is a great idea, and you mentioned this thing about the most expensive thing, your washing machine. Yeah, it is like that because we just bought now a dryer after many years of hanging out like clothes, and because like you wash the clothes, but then you leave them on a hanger for 5 to 7 business days, because you don't have time to it. And even though we have this dryer now, you just put it in. But that was fun for the first 2 days. But now it's just like sitting there. Nobody cares about. Yeah, and this is a great idea about the laundry. Just leave it outside. Somebody will wash it for you and bring it back. Whoa.
I think it's. I don't know. Let's see how they grow. Let's see how they scale it. There's also not that much money in there. People also don't want to pay too much. But I can. I mean, like especially like maybe in the more urban areas where people don't have a laundry machine, so they would anyway go to like laundrette, like in the US, I think that's even more common. So So it might be, it might be a really great business. Yeah.
All right. So as a final question, just one book, podcast, or maybe blog post you would always recommend to marketplace builders.
I think I already recommend other people's books, and I've mentioned my podcast more than enough. So I'm going to recommend actually our book. It's called The Lean Marketplace. So called like the Lean Marketplace after the Lean Startup, but the Lean Marketplace. We wrote this already maybe, what is it now? Like 6, 7, 8 years ago? Maybe 7 years ago. It's on Amazon. It was a bestseller for a while. We sold more than 10,000. But it's like a really practical guide having all of the lessons that we've learned, from launching those thousands of marketplaces and seeing what founders did wrong, talking to people, there's lessons from how when we talked with other marketplace founders or investors, etc. I think that really is this is a breakdown how we think marketplace should be built, and it's very close related to also how we build the product and why our product works the way it works. And it's completely tech agnostic, so you can take the book and go to one of our competitors and still use all of the information. Like it's not a brand book in that way. And we've tried to be as honest and giving as possible in the information. So I think that book is, for me, is really sort of a really good starting into marketplace. Like if you don't know, if this is new to you, then this is a really great primer on how does this type of business actually work? Because there's not that much info out there. So.
All right. So yeah. As closing, you want to give some shout outs to your team or anyone else?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically shout out to the whole team. I think we are a really special company. Like, I think we get super good reviews always from our customer because we are sometimes a bit too honest about whether things work or not work or whether they should become our customer. And like I said, like everybody has done really important work, whether that is with launching a new product or people in my project team or people in the customer support who just keep everybody happy. So, no shout out to anyone in particular because there's too many to mention, but definitely to everyone. So,
all right. Thank you so much, Sjoerd, for this awesome episode. And yeah, thank you for our audience for sticking around. Make sure to check out Sharetribe. If you want to build your marketplace, now is the time to do it. So take good care, everyone. We'll be back next week.
Take care. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this section of Hipther Talks. Thank you for being a part of our journey today. Don't forget to tune in next week for more insights and discussions. Stay connected with us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until then, keep exploring and keep growing. We'll see you next time.